Welcome everyone to a second video about how to make your own short film. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about 6 important things that you need to think about when making your own short film. If you're new to this channel, hi, I am Dragana. I am a lead animator at Steamroller Animation, and I've been in animation industry for about 10 years, out of which 4 I spent making my own short film, which I'm now sharing everything I learned from with you guys. So let's dive in. Number 1, getting a grant. I got the Epic Mega Grant 3 years ago, and the journey of getting a grant was really enlightening for me because it came at a time where I was in a serious burnout with my short, which I explained in the previous video that you can watch here. But at the time, I spent almost 2 years animating on my own, laying the groundwork and blocking for all the 16 shots we had, and I was seriously drained out from my full-time jobs and working on this show for part-time and on weekends. So when I saw a grant opportunity, I was ecstatic because it was almost like a procrastination excuse that I wanted to take a break from animating. And applying for that grant was the most fun I think I ever had, because not only it included for me to summarize what my project was about, to concisely write a pitch that would get me the grant and resources to continue working, but it also made me think about human attention and how do you attract someone's attention in a sea of other applicants, because I assume there must be so many people who apply to that grant, and I wanted to stand out somehow. I wanted for them to get to know me, not just my project. So to kind of have that emotional wire between us as well, in order to get the grant more easily. That was my logic at the time. So on top of that form I had to fulfill and send, I decided on my own to film a 2-minute pitch video where I represented myself and I told them who I am and why am I doing the short, and I showed them my animatic, 1.5 minute animatic that I had at the time that was at a pretty good stage, and I sent that. And the process of filming that pitch video, coming up with a script, editing it, and all of that, that was my first entry into the world of filmmaking for social media that I will figure out much later. But that was kind of the early steps of it, learning how to combine video editing and storytelling so it grabs attention. And I use that to get a grant. Of course, a huge disclaimer, I will of course never know if my pitch video was the reason why I got the grant. It's most likely it's the animatic and the stage it was in, but somehow I like to believe they liked me and they kind of saw the potential in the project and they kind of saw what it can be. So somehow all of that combined, after 8 months of applying, led to this email in my inbox. And from that moment on, everything changed. Because suddenly, now I needed to manage that money and start thinking about hiring artists. This is where my biggest growth on the project came. When the money first came in, if you haven't managed a larger sums of money before, this will definitely be a challenge for you, to say the least. Challenge in terms of you still don't know how to bid for certain tasks. You still don't know that you need to bid for the overhead. And that is something I learned much later on when my money was already gone. But in the beginning, I thought we had an endless amount of money to spend, and let's start spending it first on concept artist and a modeler. And in those early stages, when the money was in abundance, I was very loose with the notes in terms of I was often getting into the stages of noodling the notes and prolonging to approve the concept or prolonging to approve the model, just so we can have something to work on and just so we can noodle and noodle to the infinity and beyond, just because we had money to work with. But of course, if I only had a fraction of that money, I would be very conservative with how much I spent. I would be very thoughtful of how many notes I give, what do those notes mean, how much time will they need to do those notes, am I paying them by the hour or by the asset? So all of that question I would have if I have had less money. So as you can see, getting the money for your short film can be a blessing and a curse if you don't know how to manage it. And pretty soon, when we entered into the rigging stage, I needed to learn the bidding for different departments. And it's one thing to bid for animation because I knew from my experience in the industry, I knew how much certain shots needed time to finish. So I knew how much my animators needed to finish a certain note or to finish a certain shot of certain complexity. But bidding for a rigging was completely different because even though I was a rigger early in my career and I knew a lot of rigging, I still do, bidding for rigging is something different because you assume that you should bid by the hour. And by the end of our collaboration, I realized it was much better to bid by the asset. Because when you bid by the hour, specifically in the rigging department, is problematic because of this. We would request a feature, rig feature, and our rigger was amazing. He always executed that rig feature. But unfortunately, since all of the artists were working part-time, that rig feature would usually break something else in the rig that was already animated, and we wouldn't figure out what broke until days or sometimes weeks later because we only worked on weekends, right? And so the rigger's feedback was slowed down. And in that loop of him fulfilling our wildest rig desires and requests, we kind of lost the big picture because I didn't know what requesting a certain rig feature would break in our rig. So I couldn't account for the unknowns of the unknown. And the rigger, of course, doesn't know what I don't know. He thinks that I know what that would break, but I wouldn't see that until much later. So it was like an enchanted circle of communicating what rig features can we request so it doesn't break what we already have. And it was never black or white, so we always needed to find a gray area. So we always needed to find, okay, we want this rig feature, but we are willing to sacrifice that it will break this one thing, which will mean that we will need to reanimate slightly in some of the shots that were already done. So it was always that kind of balance we needed to strike with the rigging. And unfortunate part, when you bid by the hour, enormous amount of time is passing by while you're figuring out all these rig bugs and rig mistakes and rig features and testing everything, and you're paying for all that process. It would be much better to bid by the asset, bid separately for joint system, for skinning system, and then bid for some maintenance afterwards. So yeah, that was a valuable lesson, and it's definitely something I'm going to implement in my next project. And it's something I'm advising my students when they're making their own short film, if they have resources to, even if you don't have money, if you're just working with your friends and colleagues, you do need to know how to communicate certain issues, because yeah, communication is definitely the key. Hiring artists. Oh man, I think I could make 10 videos on this topic, but this is where I needed to grow the most and I needed to learn the most, because when I first got the resources, I started hiring, as with anyone, I started hiring my close circle of friends, my colleagues, people who I already knew that were good in the industry and that I didn't need to look at their work. I knew how good they are and I didn't need to interview them at all. So the first round of artists I hired were people who I basically launched immediately on their shots. I'm speaking now only about animators. Concept artists and modelers were my friends and colleagues as well, and they were great. I'm just speaking about animators now, hiring animators. And this is where complications started to emerge. Because working with friends turned out to be challenging. With some friends and colleagues, I had an amazing collaboration and amazing relationship, but with some, I had issues because for some reason, people don't treat personal projects the same way they treat Marvel project, Disney project, Framestore project, AAA games project, and they don't treat your project as seriously. My biggest lesson there was that in the beginning I was very angry at them and I was very frustrated. How is it possible that these professionals can't do a professional work if I already hired them, if I paid them the industry rate? But pretty soon I realized I cannot blame anyone. The only one to blame is me, because I was the one that didn't have the proper boundaries, that didn't have the proper deadlines. I didn't check in them often enough, because I was thinking that just because someone is a professional and a good artist, they will deliver on time, they will have no technical issues, they will communicate perfectly with me. So basically, I was seeing myself just as their buddy who is animating on the side, and they should just deliver magically with no supervision, with no coordination. So I didn't see myself at the time as a showrunner. I didn't see myself as a proper director. I was still in the mindset of an animator who is just animating. And in order to change that belief, I needed to burn myself for a couple of times, hiring some people who weren't the right match, who didn't respect agreements, deadlines, and I needed to let some people go. And that was painful. That was really painful, especially if you are more on the agreeable side and you don't like conflict as much. So learning how to eat up negative emotions, not eat up, but handle negative emotions and live in that uncomfortableness, live in that conflict, was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn on this project. And of course, I couldn't have done it alone. So how did I, at the end, learn to hire those artists? So I remember there was a time in my project where I had a huge turnover rate of artists, where artists kept coming in onto my project and leaving, coming in and leaving. And I couldn't figure out what the hell am I doing wrong. Like they were good artists, they had amazing reels, they were nice, but somehow my shots, like, are not being completed. And of course, I'm paying them by the hour, and I'm losing my money all this time. So, and I remember I was so desperate. I kept thinking, why is this so hard? Why is making short films so hard? Shouldn't it be easier? Because I was always referencing my personal shots I did before. There are 2 personal shots I did before, and that was a lot easier to do. I was basically just animating. This was the first time I was a showrunner. And I didn't know who to ask for help. I didn't know who can help me. Who do I even ask? And I was so lost. That was one of the definitely lowest and darkest time in a production. And honestly, I thought that I can't finish this film, and then I somehow need to abandon it. Luckily, for some strange reason, my studio, Steamroller, at the same time has launched a mentorship program where they paired high-level executives with artists in the studio. And I was lucky to be paired with Aaron Gilman, our CEO. And in these mentorship sessions, I was basically explaining to him the problems I had with artists, and he immediately smelled that something was off, that something was not quite working, and I knew that something was not working, and I knew it was me. I just didn't know what is it. It was like staring me in the face, but I had a blindfold. And just being able to talk with someone, that's why it's so crucial to have a mentor that guides you on your journey. Either it's a short film, personal shot, doesn't matter, but it's so crucial to have someone to point out the blind spots, not just artistically and creatively, but other aspects of the show as well. So anyway, Aaron was the one who helped me design the interview process. How should I screen the artist? What type of artist what type of animators am I bringing on the show? So he helped me design some key interview questions I should ask someone before they hop on my show. And I was baffled by this because he told me the questions I already knew, and I was being asked this question numerous times before in my career. So it's not like he invented the wheel or anything like that, but it was more like, how did I not see something so obvious? And it's just amazing how blind we are when we are the one in the fire, and it's so much easier to see someone else struggling, which again, why you need a mentor. If you have so many artist problem later down in production, how do you prevent that before time? And I was like, well, I don't know, do I give them like a short test they should do and screen them like that? Like, I don't understand. And I even tried doing that. I asked some artists whether they were willing to do a test, but most of them said no. Actually, no, all of them said no. So if they're not willing to do a test, how on earth am I supposed to predict whether someone will be a good match or not? And that's when the interview questions came in. And what he advised me to do, and that turned out to be very fruitful, was to induce a short conflict in an interview process. What do I mean by that? I know this might sound triggering or might sound bad, but here's what I mean by that. In my case, that meant that I was asking people to describe me a previous conflict they had in their workplace. Why was that important? Because that revealed 2 things for me. First, they reveal how they are reacting to this slightly uncomfortable question. It's not the best question in the world. It has a discomfort in it. There's immediate small conflict in it. And if they became defensive and they're kind of trying not to give me the answer, they were fighting me, that also gave me an insight into how are they going to react to notes? How are they going to react to feedback they don't like? Are they going to fight with me on every negative note or every uncomfortable situation? I didn't want to spend so much energy fighting the artist. I wanted us to collaborate together and make something great. And the other thing that was important was that if they described a conflict where they were the hero and whoever they had a conflict with was a villain, that also told me a lot about them, because that meant they couldn't take the responsibility for an argument or a conflict, which also is kind of a red flag. It's never one party that's 100% guilty. There's always a 50-50 at least. There's always some muddy gray area. And I wanted to see whether they can take responsibility, accountability. Can they be vulnerable? Can they say they weren't right? Can they admit that something was their fault? I wanted to see that honesty in them. And that question was like a magic question, because people immediately wanted to hide whatever conflict they had in the past. And to me, that was also an indicator, okay, wait, so you're in the industry for 5-10 years and you never ever had a conflict with anyone, which is also a red flag if you think about it, because if you never had a conflict with anyone, that means what? You're a pushover, you can't say what you want, or you say what you don't mean, you're a people pleaser. And again, I don't want someone who will just execute my notes. I wanted a partnership. I wanted a partner, someone who can challenge me as well, who can tell me, hey, Dragana, this note is crap, don't do that. So yeah, that's where all of these questions really showed me who is the right fit for the project and who isn't. And they worked like miracles, because as soon as I started implementing that interview process, I found my animators. Like that. And that was amazing, because if only I had implemented that sooner, if only I knew that sooner, if only I had someone to guide me or just advise me, I would have saved so much money and time and energy. But I guess that's the lesson I needed to learn, which I'm now sharing with you guys. Getting additional sponsorship from my studio, Steamroller Animation. So once I got the Epic Mega Grant, Jalil Sadul, our CCO, really wanted to support me as well. So the studio gave me resources mainly in animators, music compositor, and background painters, and some additional support in terms of rigging and modeling, but that was quite minor. What I really love about that type of support is that they didn't want to overthrow my creative vision just because they were supporting me. So they were much like Epic, that they just gave me resources and let me manage them. So I was the one that was managing all the artists, and I'm grateful that they didn't interfere with the creative vision, which is something a lot of studios would do when they support you, because their name is going to be associated with you. So I'm very grateful that Jalil had a lot of faith in me to deliver a show of this quality, and that I could manage all the artists under my roof, which is something to consider when you start thinking about funding your passion project, short films, games, whatever you want to fund. And that is, not all your funding needs to come from one resource. So some resource you can get on one side, like grants like Epic. There are many other sites. I'm going to leave the link in below where you can check other grants. But once you get one grant, you have a way higher chance of getting a second grant or a second support, because you already have social proof or some sort of proof that someone believes in your project, someone thinks it valuable. So it's almost creating I don't want to say FOMO, but people, you build credibility for your name, for your project, that you can actually wrap the show and that you're able to get some funding for the show, which proves that you're competent enough not only to make the show, but to produce it on a high level by getting funding on multiple sides. Also, I have to mention, when it comes to funding, I did invest a lot of my own money as well, especially in times when I was the one that was making error in hiring artists, bidding errors. So everything that was an error on my end, I was honestly, I consider that as the best investment, best self-development school, because there is no course, no mentorship you can buy where you can learn all of this on your own skin. Unless you experience it on your own skin, there is no Udemy course you can buy on how to manage people on your own short film or how to hire artists for your passion project. So I saw that money as an investment in myself, because one day I'm gonna be a supervisor, I'm gonna run a different show, and all of these skills are be so fruitful for me to have. Or I'm going to manage a different team, doesn't matter, but knowing how to get a certain production of any kind from A to B and have some and create something with a team of people, you're becoming a completely different person on that journey. And the reason why you started in the first place is long gone. Now you're completely transformed and now you want something else. And I'm gonna make a separate video about investing in animation and investing in your own personal shot and what does it mean for your career. I don't want to segue into that now, but subscribe and you will see when that video comes up. So let's go on to the next topic. But in a nutshell, investing in yourself in personal project is basically like a leverage or a lever that you need to pull in order to progress to the next level. Because if you just take the money you earn and spend it on pleasures and short-term satisfaction, is not going to get you too far. As soon as I started earning, and as soon as I got my first job, I reinvested a lot of that money back into my education and into my own head. So all of that is paid enormously for me. And if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't be here filming this video now. The last thing was marketing. How do you market a short film? As we were getting closer to wrapping the film, I realized that I can't just publish the film. I have to let people know about it first. So it's one thing to make an amazing product, it's a whole different thing to let people know about it. It's kind of the same logic that I had when I was applying to Epic Mega Grant. It's one thing to apply, but it's a whole other thing to stand out and to attract someone's attention in order for someone to watch it. And I took that pretty seriously. And again, I invested a lot of money into marketing courses, social media courses, mentorship to learn the skill of copywriting and doing viral short videos. And I focused on marketing the film for the last year, and while also doing final animation polish for all the shots in parallel, supervising my lighter and compositor, music compositor and all of that, but also marketing the film, since animation is like 90% done. So marketing the film is now the big topic for the past year, and I learned so much. And in marketing the film, I gained something like 50,000 followers, and I had multiple viral videos where I learned that it doesn't matter how niche the topic is you want to share, whether that be Maya, Animbot tip, or a rigging feature, your videos can reach millions, and that's where a whole nother Pandora's box opened for me. because suddenly I realized that when you have the power to write in a way that people will listen and to tell a story in such an order that people will magnetically turn in, almost like they're wired to, human brains are naturally wired to hear stories in certain ways. And if you know how to engineer your story or your video or your animation for how human brains are perceiving stories, you're almost hooking them immediately. They're immediately hooked to watch your story. And to me, that realization that virality is not luck, that it can be engineered, it can be designed, for me it was mind blowing. And ever since then, I try to share with the animation community how important it is to have a social media presence. I saw how many animation studios and small animation teams and individual animators are starting to branch on social media and to push their own IPs and create content for animated content for social media, and how they too have the same problem. How do you attract attention? How do you get someone to watch? Because it doesn't matter that your animation is pretty, that you have clean arcs and polished shot. Nobody cares about that anymore. I mean, it is, I don't want to undermine it, it is a craft, it is an art on its own. Looking at something that beautifully moves, like Pocahontas is here. But knowing how to tell a story plus combine it with a beautifully mesmerized animation for vertical format in a sea of millions of content uploaded online, literally that is a superpower. And that's when I realized that I can actually use the knowledge I gained from marketing my own video and figuring out how do I tell stories about making short film, how the same principles apply to making animation for vertical content online. And that led me to create a mentorship program that I'm going to launch soon. You can apply to the link below. That led me to create a program that would cater for animators who want to either market their own short film online or animate for social media, or just animators who want to adjust their demo reels or their old animations for social media for vertical content, and how do they write on LinkedIn, Instagram, so studios reach out to them, not only them to studios. So as you can see, this whole insane journey started with me just wanting to animate something that resembles Pocahontas' hair, and led to creating a course about animating for social media and standing out as an animator. And yeah, I mean, it's insane when I think about it. And it's gonna happen to you as well if you start doing anything remotely entrepreneurial and your own, and that includes a simple personal shot. You will see how you will transform in it. There is no way you stay the same person you were when you started it. So if you want my help on that journey, you can sign with the link below, and I'll see you there.